Daniel 5 and 6. Well, the mention of Belshazzar in 5:1 tells us that we've moved up to the year 539, because this will be the very end of the Babylonian kingdom in our chapter. In fact, it's the beginning of the Medo-Persian kingdom that we'll see in chapter 6. So let's begin in 5:1. We hear a story of a feast. Belshazzar is the last king. He's the son of Nebuchadnezzar, and he is going to be giving a feast. They brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem, and they praise the gods of gold and silver. So, in other words, Belshazzar is having a feast praising his gods, and of course you always get the sense in this kind of literature where the story is going if someone is openly worshiping another god. Verse 5, in the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. It sounds like an eyewitness account that we have a hand show up and the writing on the wall. This is the story. The words that were written on the wall, we know the meanings of the words, and in fact I think Belshazzar would have known the denotation, shall we say, of these three words. It was the connotation that he didn't understand. Meneh means it's a mina, or 50 shekels. It means it's a standard of measurement or money. Tekel is a shekel, and then Paris, or upharsin, is the plural of Paris. Paris is a half shekel. So it would be like, in English, quarter, dime, and nickels. It's versions of money, or denominations of money. But like most words, there's a noun and also a verb element. And what Daniel is called in, when the astrologers and the soothsayers couldn't tell the king what this miraculous writing meant, Daniel is brought in, and what he does is he says, well, the God that I worship has shown me what these words mean, and what he does is give the verbal meaning, not the noun meaning, behind these three terms. Tekel means to number, or Meneh means to number. Tekel means in the verb form to weigh, and Paris means to divide. And so basically what he says to the king is that God has weighed you, he has numbered your days, and he has divided your kingdom. And that night we hear that Belshazzar is killed, the last verse of chapter 5, in fact. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being almost 62 years old. So that's chapter 5. Chapter 6 is, of course, the famous story of Daniel in the lion's den. It's a good children's story in one sense, but I like the story because of just how clearly it recounts the entire biblical story, not only in the words it chooses, but the general story that we hear. Daniel, we hear at the beginning of chapter 6 that Daniel has become, in the Medo-Persian Empire, and by now he's very old, he has become one of the main men in charge of large, vast areas of the kingdom. In fact, he is the cause of jealousy among other governors of the land. And so they are looking for a way to get him ousted, just basically because of jealousy. And they make this interesting comment that the only way we are going to find him at fault is through the relationship he has to his God. In fact, the word for faithful is used. This is in 6:4. They could find no charge or fault because he was, and here's that word, aman, that we have heard before. Daniel was faithful to his God. No error or corruption was found in him. Probably words that had political overtones. It doesn't mean he's perfect behaviorally. It just means that he is a good man. He is faithful to his God. And of course, so they decide that they're going to find fault in him in terms of a way that he follows his God. Now, what has been the larger point of the entire biblical narrative? It's the issue of worship. So what they do is they go to the king and say, let's make a rule, O king, that this is for Darius, that no man can worship any other god for 30 days except your God, O king. And of course the king goes along with that. And Daniel, of course, as the story goes, knows this law has been written, but he does, as the text says, what he always does. He opens his window in the direction of Jerusalem. Now, there is no temple. Again, there's no sacrifices here. It's simply an action of a man who loves his God, who used to live. Daniel used to live in the presence, as it were, of his God in Jerusalem as a boy, and he's simply showing honoring or showing loyalty to this God in a foreign land. Again, no ritual is included at all. Well, of course, the men find out about this. They turn him in, and in an interesting twist of plot that you wouldn't have guessed, Darius is sad because Darius likes Daniel. He's been very faithful as one of his governors. So he tells him, well, the punishment, of course, for what you have done is to be cast into a den of lions. And he tells him, and maybe he says it quietly under his breath to Daniel, that I believe that your God can save you. Interesting words of, again, a polytheist, but he believes because of Daniel's character that his God could possibly save him. Knowing how your God works, I have no doubt, he seems to say. Well, the next morning the king runs to the den, and Daniel yells that his God, had sent, here's that word again, a malach, a messenger, to protect Daniel that night. I'd love to see a video of how that went, whether this messenger had to physically get involved. But he keeps the lions' mouths shut, and Daniel is alive. Well, why? And I find it, again, just beautiful how the text puts all the pieces together. It says that the reason he was saved was because he believed in his God. Well, guess what? And this is in 6:23. He believed, Daniel believed in his God. The word that's used for believed, it's previously been used in 6:4 for faithful, but now it's used in 6:23 for the word believed. So once again, we see that belief in the Bible, even in this beautiful children's story, as we often use it, belief is not just something you say or do for a brief period, but it's something that you do over an extended period, and that again would be to be found faithful to one's God.